Okay, so let's get started. So today I'm going to do the sattvic second, which is what I did also last time, just a quick sattvic check-in. Then I'm going to review the main points from last week. Then I'm going to talk about empathy and attunement. Those two things go together. And then I'll open it up for questions. Okay? So this is exactly what we did last week, 1 week ago at this time, right? Getting clear on why you're here. Because we have a whole week of a lot of things we do. And sometimes it's easy to forget why we're here. We just kind of rush in here and then rush out. So just take 1 minute to tune into yourself. Why are you here? What is your purpose for this next 45 minutes? What are you hoping to get out of this? Why are you here? I'm asking you to close your eyes and close your mouth and look in to your heart and see what is that reason. You don't have to answer to me, but answer to yourself so you get crystal clear on what you're trying to get out of this time for yourself. Okay? So I'm just going to remind you again, the purpose of Vedic psychology is to learn about yourself in order to clear out anything that is blocking your mind from advancing spiritually. So it's easy to forget that. So it might sound like a broken record, but that's why we're here, okay? The main points from last week's lecture are that in order to understand a guru's subtle teachings, we have to get our minds into a state of sattva, right? That was one of the main points. And the quickest way to do this is to increase our empathy. That kind of was a punchline last time, remember? And there was a bullseye, that was the last slide. So then I'm going to review. There's 3 types of empathy. So cognitive is more like thinking, like, oh, I understand what he or she is going through. You get it. You can take the other person's perspective. That's cognitive empathy. Like, I know your mind. I don't feel your mind. I don't feel what you're going through, but I can read you. That's cognitive. Affective is the heart. Oh my God, I feel for you. I can feel you. I'm one heart with your feelings. So just say somebody, maybe parent just died. You're crying with them, like the story I told last week about my friend Laura. She was crying with me, you know? So that's like the very high affective empathy, the emotional empathy, right? And then the third one is this compassionate empathy, which is the combination of perspective taking, understanding what the person's going through, combined with feeling. And the reason why that's so powerful is because it propels you to act in a way that's kind to them, in a way that's compassionate to them. The other two would not necessarily make you act in a way that's in their best interest, interestingly. So for example, cognitive empathy, you might act in a way that you could manipulate them because your heart is not really aligned with them, just you can read their mind, you know? And affective empathy, you can be overly emotional. In other words, your own samskaras are getting triggered. So you're so emotional you can't even see what they need. But compassionate balance it's a balance of those two perfectly balanced that makes you act in a way that is not from what you need or how you feel, but it's for them, what's best for them, that compassionate empathy. So that's the best type, okay? So I broke down empathy into our mind states just to see from our point of view, from this sattva, rajas, tamas, what does empathy look like? So if you're in the mode of tamas, tamasic empathy is, I don't know your mind, cognitive, I don't know your heart, affective. I don't even know my mind, but I feel my heart. So very emotional. So you're acting only on how you feel. Not how they feel, not what they think. You can't really put yourself in that perspective, but you feel like you are, because tamas, you always feel like you're right. You feel like you are. But you're just feeling your own heart and projecting it onto them and acting. That's tamasic empathy. Next one up is rajasic empathy. I know your mind. I got it. I know how you, I can take your perspective, I can see. But I don't feel your heart. So this can be a very dangerous type of empathy because you can manipulate the other person. You can control the other person. And you don't feel bad about it. Because you don't feel what you're doing to them. Okay, that's rajasic. Then that sattvic empathy is that compassionate one. I know your heart and I feel your heart. So I wouldn't do anything to hurt you. I just couldn't. That's the highest type of empathy. Okay? The sattvic. Surprise, surprise. All right? So then, what is the common denominator in both rajasic and tamasic empathy? What do they have in common? Service. What do these two have in common in terms of Rajasic and Tamasic service? Lack of empathy. Lack of empathy. You see these two, do they look empathetic to you? First of all, don't they look like they stole the car? And second of all, they look a bit crazy, right? I don't think these two, if they came up knocking on your door when you were feeling sick, would you think that they'd make a good decision for what's best for you? Okay. Excuse me. So, I had some. Where did I put it? Okay, thank you very much. I've been in sessions, so I lost my voice a little. Look at all the empathetic people here. Thank you. Okay, so lack of empathy. Empathy means that you can step outside of yourself and see things and feel things from someone else's point of view, okay? And it's one of the most important human emotions because it's how we connect to other people. When you feel like you've had a really heart-to-heart connection, even if it's just for one conversation with someone, think about what actually happened, what occurred. Didn't you feel like they got you and you got them? That's because that's the empathy. When you feel really connected, you drop your ahankara down, you see yourself, you see from their point of view and you feel it. And you're like, oh my God, that must have been horrible. I do a lot of couples work, couples sessions, and that's what I help them do. I do a technique where I help them drop down the ahankara, and for this next hour, it's all about your partner. You're just gonna hear what they're saying and take notes like a reporter and write it all down and say it back to them. And then you have to eventually hear enough and ask enough that you can actually feel something in your heart. And I'm not saying it happens every session. Sometimes we have to do many to get there, but that's the goal. Because usually when two people are communicating, do you really feel like someone's hearing you? No. You're talking, and then they're not even hearing it. Because if you actually listen, you really listen, you would actually say something back about what they said, not what you think. Like, oh, I hear you. Like, tell me more about that. You know? So if you're really listening, you're dropping what you think how things should be, and you're hearing them. And the more you have some skin in the game, the more you're going to want to fight for your point. So it's very hard to be empathetic if you're having a disagreement about something. Because you're already triggered that they don't understand you, they don't hear you. So you're like, listen to me. I just got it. So the empathy's out the window, you know? So one of the quickest ways to connect heart to heart, you know, is drop the ahankara and just listen and ask good questions and mirror back what you hear them saying. You know, I'm not going to get into communication today. I'm just doing a little diversion right now for it, but we could definitely do many classes on healthy communication using empathy, you know, in the future. And so anyway, empathy is defined as the ability to understand another person's emotions, positive and negative, and place yourself in their position. And if you think about why is that so hard to hear the negative? Because it usually relates to you. It's triggering to you. Like, I don't like it that you did that, or I don't think you should go out, like, you know, with these couples, like, I don't think you should go out golfing with your friends. I think that's rude. I have a baby at home, and you think you're gonna go party with your friends and go golfing and party with your friends when I'm at home all day with this crying baby? So it's like a different desires. Their desires are not matching up, you know? So it's very triggering to hear somebody's negative feedback to you, right? Because doesn't match with how you want. And then the husband's like, I've been working all week supporting us. I need a break. What the hell, you know? I'm the one who wakes up at night with the baby. So then but the wife can't hear that because she's tired. So this is the problem with empathy. It's very hard when it doesn't match with how you think you are, you know, and how you think you should be being in life, you know, how you should be operating. It's very hard to place yourself in their position. So we actually are having an empathy epidemic. The University of Michigan did a study, and this was a longitudinal study over decades, many decades, studying empathy. And what they have found is that empathy levels have reduced by 40% among college students that they've been studying over like 30 years. And what they said is in the past 10 years, it's the sharpest decline. The most we've gone down in empathy in the last 10 years. And there's many different theories why. A lot of it has to do with technology, you know, parents not being home to raise the kids, and the kids are just being raised by themselves, or by the TV, or by now the laptop, or the iPad, or games, or, right? So how are you going to have empathy for someone if you don't have a human relation? That's how you learn to have empathy, right? And so these are some pictures. Look at the couple. They're like hugging, but they're both texting. Or playing a video game or something. Or this guy who thinks he's like, you know, so great, but who would want to hang out with that guy? I wouldn't, you know, he doesn't look very empathetic. And the other guy who's just driven by money, he's even smoking a dollar bill, you know? So these people don't look very empathetic. So back to our friend the cat from last week. So there's actually something, you guys, called the empathy deficiency disorder. It's actually called EDD, empathy deficiency disorder. Some people call it empathy deficit disorder. And if you look at this cat, this is what I was saying last week too, does the cat look very empathetic to that mouse? The mouse is like, imagine if the cat were empathetic, what would it be thinking? Like, it would be like, oh my God, like, that poor little baby mouse, like, somebody could attack it. I should take care of it. I should pick it up and bring it to a safe place because somebody could attack it. But that's not what the cat is thinking. The cat is thinking like, that looks like a very juicy, tasty lunch, right? So it's only thinking about what it needs. It has zero empathy for the mouse. So empathy, look at it now. It's gonna kill it. You see the mouse? It's like a slow-mo picture of the mouse running. Empathy deficit disorder is the trait of lacking the ability to feel, understand, and resonate with another person's feelings. You can clearly tell that he's about to kill that mouse and he doesn't care. He's happy. There it is. Got it in his mouth. The person tends to focus on their own needs and neglects the other person's or people's emotions, even close friends and family. So with this mouse, he doesn't care. Probably that mouse might have been a mom or a sister or maybe a brother or a father. It's definitely part of some sort of mouse family, but it doesn't care. It just got its lunch. And this is a very good example because we're not picking on any of us. So our ahankaras are down. We're not highlighting any person here, so we can look at the cat and mouse as a very nice example and then try to apply it to ourselves because all of us have been unempathetic at times. Try not to apply it to anyone else which is hard, but try to apply it to yourself. When has there been a time, maybe even in the past week or the past day or the past hour or the past minute, when I have tended to focus on only what I need and not the other people in my life who I care about? So look at this cat. Now he's biting. So empathy deficiency disorder, here are some of the things. Affective empathy is lacking, right? That's the one, heart. I feel for you. I feel for you. They struggle to build and maintain emotional connections with people. They can be overly judgmental or critical of others, and they underestimate what other people are going through. They only see the final result of the person. They only see how the person is now. They aren't able to say what that person must be going through to actually act like that, And I have a lot of clients that are actually friends with each other and they all refer each other to me. And then they bitch about each other. But that's normal because everybody does that. It happens here too, everybody does that. So, but what I tell them is, that person, they were your friend, so you knew them when your hearts were matching. Otherwise, why would you be friends? When your hearts are not matching, you have to think of the goodness of this person. That's your friend. So they must be in a really bad place to be treating you like this now, right? So you have to have compassion for them, saying they're not maliciously trying to hurt me or do something bad to me. They're actually struggling. And if they realized it, they'd knock it off, which means they don't even have a clue. That's sad. So that's what I try to help them see. Your friend is still your friend and the friend's still a good person. It's just that for whatever's going on in their life, they're very triggered and they're hurting you and they don't even realize it. So I'm not saying put your heart out on a silver platter and get smashed by them again. You have to make a healthier boundary, but at least realize it's not a purposeful thing that you're bad and I'm going to try to kill you or whatever it is that you feel that they're doing to you. That's your own samskara being triggered from probably some relationship with a caregiver in your past who hurt you, thinking that this person can do that to you. But there's no possibility. How could they do it to you? You're a full-grown man or woman. You can take care of yourself. Nobody's going to kill you. We're all also under Babaji's shelter. It's not going to happen. It feels like that, though. It feels like that when your childhood samskara gets triggered. And then you fight back in some way, So this empathy deficiency disorder can also, this last point here, when a person has this, they usually don't show appreciation or gratitude. They're not very thankful, and they don't show it. There's another extreme when people are overly thankful, and that's another issue called love bombing. That's another issue, so you got to be, what I'm saying is the person has to be genuinely, authentically, sincerely appreciating you. Not one extreme and not at all, because see, if you can show appreciation or gratitude, think about that, what that means empathy-wise. If you show appreciation to someone, what that means is you put yourself in their shoes. like last week when I said, Vilas, that was so nice, you're sitting here wrapped up in a winter jacket practically, but you put the AC on for me, because you know I run hot. That means I put myself in his shoes. I thought of what he went through, what the thought process was he had to go through, what kind of like tapasya he had to do himself to struggle for this hour just to support me. I was able to put myself in his shoes, and then I thanked him. So people who, if you're not expressing gratitude or appreciation for people in a sincere way, meaning that you put yourself in their shoes and you really do feel that, then that means you're low on empathy. Symptoms of lack of empathy. Look at this person. It's pouring rain. See how he keeps the umbrella over himself only? So one symptom of empathy, of lack of empathy, is you struggle to make new friends, because friendships come when you connect to somebody's heart and you do something kind for them and you listen to them and you hear them. You don't boss them around, you don't criticize them, you don't tell them what to do, you know, or do things, selfish things. You have one heart with them. So it's hard to make new friends or make friends at all if you don't have empathy, or even keep friends. Because of this difficulty of making an emotional heart-to-heart connection. That's difficult. Also with lack of empathy, because you can't put yourself in someone else's shoes, then it's very easy to criticize people, because you can't actually feel what they're going through. You can't get it. You only see their symptom and how they're triggering you and making you feel some sort of negative way. So then you don't like them. I already said they struggle to show appreciation. I already explained why. They have high levels of expectations, also for themselves. Not only for others, and they're extremely critical of others, but for themselves, too. You know, in other words, this empathy starts with having empathy for you, for your hardships, for what you're going through. And if you don't have that, how are you going to have it for anybody else? So they're very hard on themselves. They're very harsh to themselves. That's also a sign of lack of empathy. And they focus on themselves more, and they struggle with really, truly listening to somebody else. And they have a lack of understanding that others who feel hurt aren't the cause of their own pain. So that was what I was saying before. If your friend or somebody, even in this community, does something hurtful to you, your pain is coming from something inside of you. It's not them doing something specifically trying to really, hurt you. They're triggered, so their own pain is causing you to feel triggered, which means your samskara is coming up. So it's hard to see that somebody else is struggling if you don't have empathy. You just think that they're a bad person. So does this girl look empathetic, at least in this picture? Not really. So consequences of the lack of empathy. It makes it possible for a person to repeatedly take advantage of opportunities to exploit other people for one's own purposes, because you don't feel bad. You're like, oh well, and you're kind of actually excited, like, yes, I got them, And without this, what we call empathy is a moral compass. So without this moral compass, unempathetic people, they plan actions and they carry them out in this very unencumbered way. They don't have like a stop button. They don't have a like, ooh, that's bad, shouldn't do that button. That's like not existing. And so they don't consider the emotional cost of their actions on other people. They don't consider it. So you may have experienced that. I've certainly experienced that. And it's painful if you actually, are feeling, and especially if you felt like you had a relationship, you felt like you had a friendship with that person, and then they do something like that, you're like, wow, they really don't care, So you have to kind of rise above your own pain about that. In other words, see that that's a childhood trauma that you've got to work through, and then try to rise above and not strike back at that person and have a lot of compassion. Maybe they're going to figure it out, maybe they're not. Might not even be this lifetime, but everybody's trying. None of us here are not trying. I mean, why are you all here on a Saturday night, right? Everybody's trying. So you have to try to remember that when you're triggered. Like, everybody's trying, and the best I can possibly do is know that I don't know all their stuff, Like, even as a therapist, I don't know all of my clients' stuff. Sometimes I hear stuff years later, I'm like, what? You never told me that. So you don't know all of your own stuff, you don't know everybody else's own stuff, And so we can't really control everything that's happening in terms of what those other people are doing. We just have to accept and say that's where they are on their path. And I've also done hurtful things to other people unintentionally. Maybe I don't even realize all the things I've done. So try to have that compassionate view for yourself and for others. Also, when you have lack of empathy, you find it like very puzzling and irrational. that other people would hesitate to do something that could hurt other people. Right? So it would be like, we should just do it. And it's like, yeah, but other people are going to be upset if we do that. And it's like, no, I mean, upset, we should just do it. It's a good plan. So maybe they're thinking about how that plan is going to benefit them in some way, and they're not understanding how it's going to affect everybody else. And this can be on a very subtle level or a very gross level. And they also are like, why would you choose to do things to reduce suffering of other people? That is way too much. You're going to do some charity thing or like some thing where you're just going to help people for the heck of it? Oh my God. Right? So these are extreme examples, but you get the idea. So empathy is our moral compass, right? It gives us that, empathy gives us an uncomfortable feeling inside, a very uncomfortable feeling when we contemplate doing something that would hurt somebody. And if we are highly empathetic, that's always coming up for us, like, oh, I couldn't do that. No, that would be too painful for them, even though I would like it. Right? Is somebody's mic on or something? No? Okay, thank you. This feeling is related actually to a specific part of the brain. I can't remember what, but there's a circuit in the brain. It's a biological thing because samskaras are not biological. They go with us from lifetime to lifetime. They're part of our subtle body. But the brain is the instrument that holds all that stuff. And the brain has a chemical response to empathy. So that's very interesting. Scientists have studied it and said, okay, there's this activation of a specific circuit in the brain that generates the response that we call empathy. And it's an unpleasant reaction to even thinking of making someone else in pain. And empathy helps us to suppress socially inappropriate or potentially hurtful actions that might otherwise cause pain and suffering to others. In other words, we're all not like some perfect sattvic angels, 100% sattvic, right? So we have those lower thoughts sometimes when you get really angry at someone of what you might want to do to them, right? But why don't we do it? Because empathy short circuits it. Now, there are people in the world called sociopaths, and they do it with pleasure. The ones who eat people, or murder a lot of people. It's very pleasurable for them. It's actually some of the only time they can feel when they do something like that. But in general, for the most people, we have empathy, and so that stops it. It's too uncomfortable. I can't imagine doing that. It's just our moral automatic compass, right? So empathy plays an important role in the development of our moral compass, which basically means it helps us be caring people, very thoughtful people, and loving people. The problem is when a samskara gets triggered, which is we have lots of good samskaras too. So whenever I say samskara in Vedic psychology, I'm talking about a negative one, even though we have like tons of positive ones. I'm talking about the negative ones that are like our faulty viral programs that make us behave in ways that hurt ourselves and others. So when one of those types of samskaras get triggered, we're blind. We're not thinking about the other person. We're thinking about, I'm hurt and I have to take action, And that action might be to say something mean to somebody. It might be to withdraw when you should stand up. It might be to maybe gossip. It might be to attack. There's something we're going to do that's very hurtful to somebody else, and we don't realize it because we're actually hurting more than them. And that's why samskaras are so important, to identify what our samskaras are and work through those to deactivate them so we can see more clearly how we're showing up, in relation to other people. So I'm going to switch gears now. That was kind of like the background of empathy, right? But now where does it come from? Where does it come from? There's lots of different, theories out there. And it's usually people say it's a mix. So that's fine if you want to do your own research, but please don't email me and tell me where it comes from, okay? I'm asking a rhetorical question, and I'm going to tell you my opinion, a professional opinion, where it comes from, which Babaji has also, gone through all these slides, and we made them together, and he agrees. But if you have your own, that's fine. No problem. The origin of empathy. So different styles of child rearing affect the development of our empathy system, okay? Empathy originates from our childhood relationship with our mother and her ability to attune to our emotional and physical needs. So this is a zinger. It's very important to burn that into your head, because that is not a small statement. Empathy originates from our childhood relationship with our mother and her ability to attune to our emotional and physical needs. So if you're like, well, wait a minute, my childhood relationship with my mother wasn't that great, but I'm very empathetic. Probably a disconnect that you're not seeing. You might be acting in an empathetic way, but from a triggered samskara place. Not from a, you know what I mean, a genuine, really feeling it and wanting to help the other person. From a place of like, I better do this so this person likes me, or I better do this so I can control this person, something like that. Mothers' attunement to our feelings as babies, their attunement is related to our ability as adults to attune to our own emotional pain. So I would say with my longer term clients, the majority of the work I do, probably 80% of the work I do with my individual clients, once we have a bond, you know, once they trust me in a therapeutic relationship, is I help them attune to their own emotional pain. And how I do it is I attune to it. And it feels really weird when I do it for them. They feel guilty, they feel selfish, they feel like I'm talking like baby talk to them. Sometimes they end up not liking me because it triggers some mother samskara onto me. Then they start criticizing me. You know, there's always something weird that comes up because it's a very uncharted waters. It's very fearful to have somebody express compassion and love to you if you didn't have it in the way that a mother should have done it. But that's the work that has to be done to rewire these samskaras, to deactivate the old painful ones where you didn't get love and to get the new ones. Somebody has to do that for you, and it can't be you. Because if you do it, you're going to act on the program already in you of the unloving mother, the unempathetic mother. So somebody's got to go in there and do it. It's very scary and very painful to have it done, but that's the level we're going at. You see that baby? When I'm doing that, when I'm helping nurture your inner child, I'm talking to this little baby. I'm trying to help you attune to your own self by me attuning to it. So empathetic eyes. Empathy enables us to accept the flaws in others with the eyes of a loving mother. So not only of ourselves, but also of others. So then that's kind of what I've been saying, right? Then you see someone else and you're like, oh my God, they must be having a really hard time, a really hard day. And if you find yourself behaving in a way that's less than desirable, then you'd say that to yourself too. I'm having a hard day, what's going on with me? Okay, I just you know, I had a bad sleep. And then on top of that, I had this and this and this happen. Of course I'm not at my best. So then you can be softer with yourself and maybe even apologize to that person. Babaji said, you must make everybody understand this concept of empathy, as it is the foundation of Vedic psychology. And lack of empathy is why there are so many problems between devotees. No one really understands the impact their mother's lack of empathy made on them in their childhood, and so as adults, it gets projected onto each other. So I would say that's a pretty big punch in the stomach, but that's what's going on in almost every devotee community that you've probably been in, including this one, you know? So I say that with confidence because I've been living in this community for a lot of years, and that's what I see. It's just a matter of how much you see it and how much you're willing to do the sincere work to get out of it. So what are the qualities of a loving mother? Because we said, you know, with the eyes of a loving mother, but if you didn't have that, or you think you had that, but maybe it wasn't that, then how the hell do you know how to do it? You know, okay, I'm supposed to look at you with the eyes of a loving mother. It's just going to be fake. It's going to be mechanical and fake, thinking, oh yes, Hari Bol, Radhe Radhe. That's not the eyes of a loving mother. Okay? So let's see what it is. Qualities of a loving mother. Compassionate. So remember I just described what compassionate is? It's the combination of cognitive empathy and affective. You can get in that person's shoes, perspective taking, and you feel it. So a loving mother is able to do that in a very beautiful way. Get in the child's shoes, like just say the child doesn't want to go to school and they're faking being sick, right? Like they do a trick. And then the unempathetic mom would be like, what is wrong with you? You get up and you get back to school. You lied to me. That's it. No dessert tonight or whatever. She'd freak out. But the empathetic mother would be like, oh, honey, what happened? There must be some reason you don't want to go because I know you're not really sick. What is it? You can tell me. I'm not going to get angry at you. And he'd be like, because like this other boy is like stealing my dessert and my snack or some probably very innocent thing. You know, he's not a malicious monster. There's something that's bothering him. Kids in general aren't going to be deceitful and lying unless they've been trained to be like that because the parents aren't empathetic. I used to be a child psychologist. That's what I did before I got to working with adults, you know, so I know them very well. I've been studying them for years, you know, and they're not that much different than adults, actually. the psyche. Adults just know how to cover it better. But it's all the same stuff. So kids aren't going to lie unless they have a reason to, which means the parents aren't being empathetic. So if you become empathetic and you say, just tell me, what is it? And then you can guess. You don't have to be afraid. Is it because of this? No. This? No. You just don't feel like it and you want to play video games? Yeah. Okay, I hear you. And then you try to talk about how we can make that work for both of us. And you have to kind of explain, well, school's kind of important because of this. But also I understand video games are important. Let's figure out a way to make that work for both. And you talk through with them. You don't come down with the sledgehammer, and you're not too soft either. Okay, so stay home all day and play video games. That's not the answer either. So Babaji is saying, like many times, to me, we should actually make a school to license parents, a Vedic psychology school to give parents a license, and you should not be able to have kids until you get this license, because that's all the work that we do. That's all the work that we do, even though when we were doing all these VIP sessions, it was for adults. We were basically nurturing the inner child and educating them, no, what your parent did was not right. And then they'd spend time defending their parent. No, my parent was great. Okay. But eventually you have to see that what they did, that doesn't mean they didn't love you, okay? It's just that they didn't know how to do it and they hurt you and you're still acting from that wounded place. That's the whole crux of Vedic psychology, So the qualities of a loving mother are compassionate, kind, comforting, emotionally stable. That means she knows how to control her own feelings and she's not projecting those onto you. Emotionally available, which means when you're triggered, she's there for you. Why? Because she's not triggered. It's not about her being depressed or her having some mental issue or her being too busy with her work or her whatever. It's not about that, because she's made a conscious decision to have a child and she understands what that means. That means she's there for the child and the child's needs always come first. She's supportive. She protects you from an unattuned father. That's a big one. Usually we think that the mother would be more passive and just loving and soft and nice. But she's the only other adult in the room oftentimes, right? There's mom and dad. And if dad is doing something abusive to the child, it's mom's job to stand up. It's mom's job to stand up. Not run away, not let him do it, to stand up and fight for that child. And she's attuned to your feelings. Do you see how this picture, she's looking at the child and she's mirroring exactly what the child's feeling is. That's an example of attunement. Attunement. Okay, so you see here, the mother's also attuned, even though they're not facing each other. He's sad, and do you see how her face looks concerned? She's concerned, and she's trying to talk to him. She's not leaving him sulking in the corner. She's not mad at him because he's sad. She's not ignoring him like he doesn't even exist. She's concerned, and she's trying to get him to tell, okay, what's happened? What's upsetting you? So I call the mother the attuning master if she's at her best. If she's like the sattvic mother, she is the attuning master. She uses her 5 senses to nurture the baby's 5 senses. So she's attuned to the baby even in the womb, but let's just say from this slide is about once the baby's out. As soon as the baby's out of the womb, she's attuning. And how she's doing it is she's meeting the baby's basic needs for warmth, for food, for sleep, for safety, for love. She's constantly with that baby and attuning to what they need. And she's adjusting herself to meet those babies' needs. She uses a gentle voice, right? I see some moms that I used to work with who had like a very loud voice, or they would shake the baby and think it's funny. And the baby had this startle response and they'd laugh, and I'm like, oh my God. So they use a gentle voice because the baby's, it's been in the womb and all these sounds are new, so you be gentle, and that creates a sense of security for the baby. She pays attention to how her child feels. Different children have different temperaments. That's what I was studying at the Jiva Public School. I was studying how they have mastered understanding children's natures. So the idea is not all kids are the same. So you have to see what's my kid like. If my kid is more like high energy extroverted type, maybe they like a firm touch. Maybe they like a loud hyper noise. Maybe they think it's funny when the parent throws them in the air and dances around. Some kids love that. Some kids are going to be freaked out by that, right? In my family, there's 4 girls, and all of us have different temperaments, Some of my sisters are much more, one of them in particular really liked that, was more high energy, and she loved it when my dad threw her in the air, And I was like, no, just hold me. I don't want to be thrown in the air, So it depends on the kid and their temperament. You have to attune to that. You have to attune to that and change how you are to match them. Their natural rhythms too. A lot of times the adults I work with, we're going all the way back to samskaras that happen in their first year of life. Very early samskaras that they don't remember. And we have to go all the way back to that It's tricky to find those, but we have to go all the way back to that to realize, oh God, like you had a food allergy or a breast milk allergy at 3 months old, and your mom ignored it that whole time. I mean, there's many things that happen in that first year that are going to severely affect you the rest of your life if they're not addressed. I'm probably going to do a lecture on that next week, on attachment styles and all that. But so the mother, her job is to mirror. You see how I keep putting pictures of the mother looking at the child and mirroring the child. And what's really important, way back when I was, in my teens, when I was studying this in my undergraduate, they said you have to get down to the child's level. And we studied, I studied early childhood development. That was what I got my degree in my undergraduate. And they said, you can't just learn it in the book. You have to go work at a daycare, which was a psychology lab, a experimental lab of the professor's children. And we each got assigned to 2 kids. And I had to spend hours there every week studying these kids and writing about it and practicing what they're teaching us in the classes. And one of the things they taught us, I was a kid myself, I was like 19, but what they taught us was you have to get right down to the kid's level. That's the first step of attunement. I mean, you look like a huge giant oak tree to like a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old. So you go right down to their level and you say, hi, how are you? Right down, and you smile at them and you wait for them to respond back, So that's a wonderful way to attune. So do you see what this mother is doing? She's right down there. She's right at her level, holding her hands and looking at her. And then the kid feels like, oh, she got me, somebody at my level. That already opens them up. The other thing is you face shoulder to, you face open to them. A lot of parents are like on their phone to the side text standing. So you come right down and you face and you look. And this works also in human relations. When I do couples therapy, I'm always like, turn your chairs to each other. Let's start with that. Look at each other and don't telling me about how bad your partner is. Okay? I'm just your coach on the side. I'm going to turn my video off if you keep looking at me. Look at each other and talk to each other. That's the beginning of attuning, So attunement is the mother's ability to be aware of and respond to her child's needs and feelings. It creates emotional attachment between the baby and the mother, right? When somebody attunes to you, you feel attached even after one conversation sometimes, even as an adult. So mother's attunement and the child's emotion. So once again, you see how they're looking at each other? The mother's ability to attune to the child's emotions in the first year of life affects the child's ability to emotionally regulate themselves for the rest of their life. That's huge. So when you see people who are emotionally dysregulated, right? Their moods are cycling very fast. That means that they did not have that first year or less than first year of the mother mirroring their feelings, having a special, holding a special space for their feelings, making them feel safe in their feelings. That means the mom had something else going on and she wasn't able to do that. And that sets the child in motion to be emotionally unstable for the rest of their life. That's why I'm saying this first year is so important for us, as even though we're adults now, whatever happened in that first year is what I end up looking at. So attunement 101. You see again, the child's upset and you see how the mother is looking and caring. Have you guys ever had a conversation with somebody like has sunglasses on? Isn't it hard when they're dark and you're like, wait, I can't read them, right? Because they're not looking at you. Or you've had one with somebody, which we all have, where they're texting and they're like, yeah. That feels so, do you feel so empty after that? Annoyed. They're not seeing me, we're not connecting. So attunement is all about the eyes, really connecting, putting everything else down. You can feel so wonderful after a conversation like that, right? So the children need the mother's help to understand their own emotions. They're little, they're babies, they don't know how they feel. But if the mother is not in touch with her emotions and she hasn't figured that out, you're kind of screwed as a kid, I'm sorry to say, put it in so frankly, but how is the kid ever have a fighting chance? So the mother has to be very serious about what it means to be a mother. What it means, you are creating a whole nother person who's going to have an effect on the whole society, right? So to be a conscientious, responsible mother, you have to have already taken care of your samskaras and your feelings, and you have to know how to manage those. Then when you have the child, you do something, the second bullet point, called mirroring and emotional labeling. Mirroring I keep talking about, right? Like I see you, I hear you, and you hold the space. Emotional labeling is, I do that often when I'm talking to you guys, If you're talking, I said, oh, you sound really anxious right now. Anxious? Sometimes you don't even realize it. Yeah, I am anxious. Or like, no, I'm not anxious. Okay, what are you? But at least we get in the conversation of feelings. No, I'm sad. Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. Actually, I'm pissed off. Oh, angry? Tell me more. I'm not telling you what you feel, but I'm helping you label. And most of us don't know how to do it, actually. You know, with my clients that I work with, I give them a feelings wheel and I say, print it off and literally laminate it. Make it waterproof and carry it around. And increase your feelings vocabulary. Because if you don't do that, you're not even really fully functioning. Your feelings are like your heart, you know? If you don't have that, then you're just operating from your mind, you know, which is kind of not very rich, not a very rich life. So this is the mom's job, but because she probably didn't do it, because she probably didn't know how, I don't want to attack any mom. My mom also didn't know how, okay? So because, that's probably why 2 out of the 4 girls are therapists. We're overcompensating for the fact that our mom didn't know about our feelings, you know? So now that's what we do all day long, talk about feelings, you know? So the idea is that you want to practice. You can practice right now as your homework. Get the feelings wheel. You can, if I haven't sent you one already, literally go on Google, type in feelings wheel. There's many. Just pick one. Pick a feelings wheel and start using it. When you're feeling off, and even if you're triggered about someone else, just get out the feelings wheel and just for yourself, be like, what am I feeling? Start labeling. That's really a nice activity to do. Then it helps. Then you don't have to act on it, you know? Don't use it to continue to want to beat the other person up. Acknowledge, like, yeah, I'm really triggered right now. I'm feeling very disgusted by this or whatever. Good. That can help. That can help diffuse it. Children often respond to the mother's nonverbal communication first. So you see in this picture, kids oftentimes they don't understand what you're saying, you know? So you have to kind of give them a hug and just hold them, come down to their level, make them feel safe. And eventually, you know, you might say one or, you know, a few words, but not like psychoanalyze them. So the unattuned mother, look at this mother. She's on the phone. She's looking away. This is the first picture I've put, right, where it looks not like all the rest, right? All the rest, the mom's looking at the kid or trying to help the kid. This mom is like, who knows, maybe talking to a boyfriend or something. She's not really checked in with him. It could be this thing in her hand is a thermometer. It could be that she's worried that he's sick. You know, that could be if we're looking at it in the most positive way. Maybe she has a thermometer and she's calling the doctor. But if she was attuned, she probably wouldn't have her back to him. Because when you're feeling sick, that's scary. When the person who's your caregiver has their back to you. So she would want to be more like facing him and maybe stroking his back or holding his hand and saying, I'm calling the doctor now. I know you don't feel well. It'll just be 1 minute. Something like that. So the unattuned mother typically ignores the child, overreacts emotionally with her own anxiety, anger, frustration, sadness, loneliness, fear, and basically uses the child for herself. You know, so here she might be triggered that he's sick, and then she might start crying. And then he's like, oh my God, I made my mom cry. I shouldn't get sick. You know, the kid takes it like really the wrong way. And then I have to be like this hypervigilant, parentified child, like such a good kid to never make my mom cry again, you know. So the mother also, one way a mother can be unattuned. Remember I talked about this toxic positivity? So then just say the kid's sick. She can be like, you're gonna make it through this, it's not that bad. And the kid's like crying and shivering. So it's like putting a fake smile and trying to cover something that's so not attuning at all, responding with like the opposite. You know, I've seen parents do that. It's very painful for the child. And also doesn't stand up for the child. The unattuned mother would not stand up for the child. So the child's needs, the child is always looking to the mother for comfort and validation of his or her feeling. The mother's lack of attunement, it really confuses the child because they don't know what their feelings are. You know, they don't know. So the mom has to help mirror and label, and then they start understanding, okay, this feeling is okay, this feeling is valid. And they don't, you know, eventually if the mother doesn't do this, doesn't attune to you and validate your feelings, you feel ashamed. You feel shameful for having negative feelings or for having needs. And I feel guilty, I shouldn't ask for that because your mom didn't validate that your needs are okay, you know? And the child doesn't understand her own feelings and the importance of them. The child feels ashamed, unloved, and rejected when her mother does not validate her feelings and needs. And she ultimately learns that her feelings are not important and that other people's feelings are important, but not hers. So I'm going to show you a quick video called the Still Face Experiment. Some of you may know it. Vilas, did I do it right? Share it.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity
Can you guys
of
see
social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 34 years ago when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Okay. Thank you. So that's just a little something I thought you guys might be interested in, to see what we mean by empathy and how important it is for the mother to attune. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes.
It's all back to normal. Okay. To see, what it's like when the mother attunes to the baby and how desperately painful it is for the baby when the mother does not attune. Did you see that? It's very, very painful for the baby. And we've all had some experience of that. I mean, one example, there's very big controversies about if you should let the baby cry it out in its own room, or if you should have the baby sleep with you and do co-sleeping. And people are very strongly opinionated on both sides, And Babaji and I have done a lot of consults with parents. And he's of the mind that you should definitely not let the baby cry it out and you should have the baby sleep with you, It's very, very painful for the baby to cry it out. I mean, what message are they getting, that they don't even exist? That they're invisible no matter how loud or how long they cry, no one's coming for them. And that's a very painful samskara that a lot of people have that they don't even realize, but it gets projected onto each other as adults, actually. So that's just one example. So what I'd like to do, in terms of what we covered today, I know it's a lot of heavy points if you're thinking about your relationship with your mother, if you're thinking about how you have been operating, maybe with some areas where you haven't had that much empathy. That's heavy to process and think about, but that's what this is the foundation of Vedic psychology, like Babaji said, and he wanted me to make these points today so we all can think about it. We can introspect over this, we can think about it. He also would like me to run a group discussion about it. But since we only have 1 minute, we're not going to do it today. I'd like to start next week with a group discussion about what we discussed today. So it's been recorded. If you feel comfortable or you have time, you can watch it again, take some notes, introspect on these points. This will be the first time I'm opening it up for discussion, And so that's different than what we've done before. But he really wants us to marinate and meditate and think very deeply about empathy. The empathy or lack thereof that was given to us from our mother, and how we operate with empathy in our life to each other and to ourselves, okay? So we'll start next week with a discussion. I'll probably have some questions for you to guide the discussion. But you also can come with what you've journaled about and thought about and processed this week. So thank you guys all for coming and listening and taking it so seriously. Haribol. See you next week. Thank you.